right, Tracy.
Counteroffer?
Counter offers. So let's see, how are we doing on time here? We're doing good. We're doing good. So we're going to talk about counter offers because if you ever purchase a home or sell a home, really good chance you're going to be in a situation where you're doing counter offers.
You're doing some sort of negotiation on the price, the terms, the closing date, the what's included in the property, different things.
So just walk people through the whole process of if you're a buyer, and how does that work? You write an offer, right? What does that mean?
Yeah, the buyer just picks out what they want to offer on somebody's property, the terms, conditions, price, what would be included, the washer, dryer, fridge, sometimes personal property, sometimes it's something that isn't bolted down, but they make their offer. It gets presented to the seller by the seller's realtor.
And part of the offer is going to detail who pays for what.
Right.
In the deal, right? You're going to have closing costs, whatever it is,
Inspections,
Yeah.
closing costs,
Okay.
title work, and who pays for what. And so sometimes the seller can sign that offer as written,
Yeah.
right? Our goal as buyer agents or buyer brokers is to write an offer a seller can sign and not have to counter, but we don't always know. The realtors usually connect, say, what's important to your seller? And if the buyer can do what's important to the seller, then we try to write that offer. But oftentimes, the seller and the seller's agent need to write a counter. And
Right.
so what happens when you write a counter offer is the original offer is off the table.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And they counter and say, we will accept X, Y, and Z, but we want to change A, B, and C.
So give an example of some of the things, the common things we see in a counteroffer, Tracy.
Well, common, obviously, number one is price.
Yeah.
These days, most offers come in at full price or above full price. But sometimes, there's escalation clauses and different reasons why we might need to clarify what price the seller is willing to take.
Mm-hmm.
And then closing date. Sometimes sellers need a different closing date because maybe they're buying a different property and they want it to coincide. Hopefully, as buyer's agents, we would have asked that question ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, the buyer might say, I really want the washer, dryer, fridge. It might be a condo that you have to take an elevator to get to, and getting a washer and dryer and fridge in can be hard to do, and they want to leave it, and maybe that the seller wants to counter and say, no, I can't leave that, or maybe it's a chandelier that the seller wanted to keep, but they forgot to say no, and so they need to counter and say, we're going to replace that one with something different. Or a lot of times it's the terms, it's who pays for what, it's the price, it's timing, those types of things that are countered.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we say a lot in this world is, everything's negotiable. Well,
Not necessarily.
Yeah, and not necessarily, because certain things like the fee that title companies charge, that's set, right? The state
set by the state.
State regulates what title insurance
fee.
Actual insurance policy is, right? Home inspector fees. I mean, those are set, right? But there's different home inspectors that have different pricing schedules, right? But who pays for it generally can be negotiated.
Yep. So my advice when we have to counter something is to counter the big rocks. Sometimes there's things that when you get an offer that you can let go. You can say, really wanted to keep my fridge, but the offer's clean. Otherwise, the dates work, the price is right. I'm not going to counter it. But
so it's usually price and dates. That's generally the
price, dates, and who pays.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
And a lot of times, Tego, in countering, people think that the offer to buy the house and sell the house is the negotiation.
Yeah.
There are several other negotiations that come up, right? So we do inspections, and a lot of times the buyer has the opportunity to request repairs. That's the next negotiation, right?
Right.
Sometimes at the end, we get an appraisal that may or may not support value, and we might need to renegotiate the sales price. We may need to renegotiate some repairs because we agreed to do something, but we can't find the part or something, right?
Right.
And sometimes when we're negotiating and we are doing counteroffers, a buyer or seller will say, I am firm. I am not I'm going to walk away if this isn't the case. This is not going to work for me if they don't come to my price or whatever. But what we typically see is people agree, right? We get things to come together. There's not a lot of drawing a line in the sand.
You know, the goal always is a win-win deal, right? The goal is that both parties feel like they won, right, to a certain extent. And I mean, no, that's not always possible, but of course,
it's not really winning, but that they got what works for them,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes people say, I've drawn a line in the sand and I won't go above this or I won't go below that. But when you get that in writing, sometimes you go, okay, the rest of it works for me. I'm going to erase that line in the sand and make it work.
Yeah, I know in this business, verbal offers is not a good deal, and verbal counteroffers is not a good deal. Everything in writing, first off, a verbal anything in contract negotiations means nothing.
It's not enforceable.
It's not enforceable. And I know, people say, well, hey, my handshake is good and all that. I get that. That's fine. It's just that, if it's not in writing, it's not real. And in our business, it has to be in writing before it's real.
Right. The Real Estate Commission says we should do everything in writing anyway. But, of course, contract law would also tell us the same thing.